Go for it.
We're back into our meeting. Recess is over. So, Mr. Mayelke, you can take over. We're now going to talk about our financial status update.
We're actually remaining in the very first bullet for CARES Act Coronavirus Relief Fund updates. Before you all is additional requests from the county staff for CRF funds. There's an additional request for $11,951. This is a 20% election CARES grant match. By the guidance that we were provided, we are able to match any FEMA or other federal funds that are being used for COVID-related expenses with CARES Act dollars. The fun one with this one is we're using CARES Act dollars to match more or less CARES Act dollars because they're CARES Act dollars directly to elections. So that's that first request. There's a 20% match for us on that one. Facilities is requesting to add some additional outdoor tables, including 2 ADA accessible tables throughout the campus. This is to allow us to make more meeting space for outside clients as well as business partners so that we don't have to use meeting spaces. We can actually meet with people outside. There has been some need. I know with land services, when they did their land sale, they did do stuff outside. So they're hoping to add some additional outdoor tables.
So let me just quickly ask on that one, because we're moving into our cold season. Is this a reasonable request at this time of year?
It is an expense that's directly related to our response to COVID, trying to make sure we have facilities that are capable of supporting our distancing and social distancing. We don't know when this is going to end, so as long as we're purchasing them with the intent of it doing that, we should be okay.
Okay.
There is also an additional grant money that is required for a match on the FEMA disaster funds. Right now, Mr. Bowen from the Sheriff's Office is stating that we need $85,000 in order to match the FEMA grant money that we've received for PPE. So that is what that line is for. There's an additional request. Last budget committee meeting, we did bring before you a request for additional licenses for Carry Guides, e-Guides licensing. This is a system that corrections uses in order to do meetings with probation clients and other clients as well. They did find that there was an additional need, plus there was a consortium of counties that got together and requested a quote for a 5-year license agreement on this. That actually increased our cost from $8,550 to $16,400. But it does give access to all of our probation agents and corrections agents to access the system so that they all can utilize it fully. This one is kind of a borderline request because we are prepaying for 5 years worth of licensing. So we are working with our consultant with CLA to determine if this will fully qualify. We wanted to include it in here as preliminary approval from all of you. And then if it's determined that it doesn't qualify, community services will have to pay out of operational budget to cover that additional licensure. So there is a backup plan if it doesn't qualify.
Do you either qualify for 100% or can you break it down to 1 year versus?
And that's what we'd do. We'd look at paying that first year
Okay.
to get the initial kickoff of the program to all the agents and then allow the rest to come out of operations.
Okay.
And then the final one on here is for the Sheriff's Office. Facilities is actually requesting this one. Currently, they're utilizing the North Garage as our area to store all of our PPE. This is not a temperature-controlled room, so they're looking to add AC units to that garage to allow it to be temperature-controlled during the summer months to make sure that our PPE doesn't degrade faster than it needs to be and we get the full life out of our PPE. That's an additional $23,037 for electrical work and AC units. So the total of the requests that are on the table today, or for your next board meeting next week, is $132,614.45. Are we okay with putting this into consent for next board meeting on Tuesday?
Well, subject to that one being reevaluated and make sure that it qualifies.
Yep.
But personally, Commissioner Franzine, you okay with that going in? Commissioner Hogue?
What's the difference of what we have today for that north garage versus what this system is gonna give us?
Currently, they don't have any temperature control systems in the north garage that I'm aware of. So this will allow them to keep the temperature, so during the summer months when the temperature climbs.
There's no heat in it now?
I don't know about heat. This is just for AC. That'd be a facilities question, but I have facilities here to answer that one. We can get further clarification on it for you.
And how much space are we talking to store this PPE? There's no other options, I guess, than to spend 23,000, that we might have more climate-controlled areas to store it?
That is a question that we asked. We don't have an answer for you yet on that.
Mr. Chairman, what I might suggest is, how about if we get the folks who have these requests here
I think so.
to answer your questions? We will not place this on the consent calendar, but we would move it to your agenda. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And then we will get the people who
Nick.
are forwarding the requests here. You also want to consider that as the December 1st timeline is
Dan is up
pretty
here.
quickly approaching, we're going to probably need to put out our last call here, our last call internally for, if you have something that you think CARES Act dollars could be used for, we need your last request. So we're also contemplating that. So if it would be okay with the board, that's what I would propose is, we'll have the folks who forwarded these invited to attend, and we will not put it on the consent calendar, so you can have that discussion.
I think that'd be better, that we could drill into some of these a little bit more detailed. If we don't have to spend the money on some of this stuff, I don't see us just spending it because it's there. I mean, let's make sure it's going to the best use possible.
Yep.
Commissioner Franzine, you okay with that?
I'm fine.
Get the people here. Commissioner Coring, comfortable with bringing in?
Yeah. Well, I guess my question is this is we're requesting to use the federal CARES Act dollars for these projects, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, so to me, it looks like our staff is trying to think of ways that we can use, that we could use those dollars to make our facilities and otherwise those monies go back. If we don't spend them, they go back, don't they?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
So
members, here's how I would
Pardon me?
reframe this. Yes, if we don't use them, they go back. We have a presumptive eligibility for public safety and public health that probably is in the tune of $6 to $8 million, and our CARES Act allocation was 8. There's no question, in my mind at least, we will be able to use these funds. And so I think the question that you guys want to wrestle with is, what's the highest and best use of those funds? And so to the point of is this, if we don't spend it on this, we will draw it down for our presumptive eligibility, and it turns into fund balance. That has value for us as well right now. And so I think it's fair for you to ask the questions about should we or shouldn't we? I don't think I see the money going back, but I do think it is about our highest and best use. And at some point, we're going to need to close this off.
Well,
I just don't have the answer to Commissioner Hoag's question today, that's all.
Commissioner Coring, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say, at least with my one vote, I just, even though somehow we think that, oh, this is federal money. Well, it's our tax money. And I just think if we can improve our facilities and we can use this money because it's there, it's kind of like reminds me of the $18 million that has been granted to the airport. If we don't spend that money out there, it's going to go back. So I guess I look at it as why don't we try to think of ways that we can utilize these funds, because I certainly don't want to send anything back. At least I know that doesn't sound like a conservative guy, but I mean, I'm trying to look out for our community and not send those dollars back.
Thank you. Commissioner Brecken, any?
No, I would agree that we should have them
let's bring those people in then, Tim, and we'll have them answer the questions. I agree with Commissioner Coring and the rest of us. I think we want to spend those dollars. I think you are absolutely right that we have the ability to spend every one of those dollars. So I don't think there's a concern of sending the money back at this point. Okay?
Okay, we'll move this to the regular agenda for Tuesday. Along those lines, with Tim talking about us looking at closing out our own internal requests as well, we are currently sitting with about 123,000 that is not utilized of the original 1.5 million that was allocated to our internal expenses. That number is a little skewed at the point at this moment because when our Munis ERP system, our accounting system, did an update. It actually broke our fully loaded cost report for all of our staff. So we haven't been able to update the staffing that was recorded dollar amount since the end of August. They did just fix that for us this week, so that number will change a little bit. I expect that that will take up the remaining 123,000. So we did maximize our 1.5 that we've allocated to us already. So that kind of leaves open the unallocated 1 million portion. With everything that is out in play for the nonprofit, for-profit grants, our portion that's still remaining, the broadband and the unallocated, we currently have about 3.58 million available still in this funding source. That does include the city and townships that contributed to our CARES grant too. So the question is kind of along the lines of what do we want to do with that unallocated portion? Do we want to open that up to start being utilized if we do have additional requests from county staff over the course of the next 15 days, 30 days, whatever it is that we determine to close out our internal portion? Do we open that up for them to use still for additional projects, or do we leave that sit until the end? With the presumptive piece, Treasury Office of Inspector General keeps changing their interpretation, and it is different than what Treasury itself is giving us. On the 21st, they updated that the presumptive eligibility is now open up, that as long as they are public safety or public health staff, their fully loaded costs from March 1st through the end of the covered period, which Minnesota has told us our covered period is November 30, they are completely eligible for reimbursement from CARES. Just public safety alone over that time frame is 8.327 million in salaries. So we are going to be well positioned that when it comes down to the end and we need to absorb the rest of this that's left, we can take that just through staffing. So we can leave this 1 million sit until we get to the end and we can allocate that towards staff, or we can leave that open as an option for projects.
Mr. Chair, I think the 1 million unallocated is probably going to get sorted and sifted through in our phase 2 recommendations with the other grant applications that we're opening up, and we're going to close it out. And so the 1 million will get moved from unallocated to these allocations. And when these have been exhausted, whatever is left, we will draw down for Crow Wing County. And so I think the 1 million unallocated is already moving.
Okay, so what are you asking?
Well, based on that,
It was
it's
information.
more information at this point.
Received and filed.
Yep. All right. That is everything I have for CARES Act updates. Last night I emailed you a list of budget amendments that came to me either this week or were finalized this week that we added. I'd like to put that here at this point to discuss. So we'll start with the Lands CRM project. They are requesting to utilize tax forfeited dollars to pay for additional time on the CRM. It's a $50,000 request from tax forfeited. This will allow them to continue the CRM project into next year, and that project is being utilized to allow us to enhance our land use permitting process and improve the customer experience when they go to do all of our permits across the board. Any discussion or questions on that one?
Mr. Chair, a lot of these requests are coming in regards to the tax forfeited income from that. What's that total amount?
Right now, the requests that they have, let's see if we can pull this up here quick.
And just for clarity, all of the budget amendments that Nick is proposing in this section of our dialogue, all would be funded out of the tax forfeited fund.
Right.
And so as you think about October, and we have to clear that, we have to sweep that account at the end of the year. And so because we have had a good year with timber sales and with tax forfeited parcel sales, we do opportunistically look for the investments we can make that might hold down our levy, might hold down our CIP in the future, before we sweep that account and distribute it.
And I was wondering what the balance of that account was.
Yep, there is currently between all of the requests that came in, from what I can see, it's $805,962 that has been requested as budget amendments from here. The budget for this fund was to apportion $329,757 at the end of the year. The budget, or the actuals, are currently putting us at about $1.551 million to apportion at the end of the year. With all of these budget amendments that have occurred, plus the ones on the table today, we'll actually be sitting at an estimated apportionment of $705,000 at the end of this year, which is approximately $400,000 more than what we budgeted and anticipated for this year. So we're still in a good position that we'll be pushing out a lot more money to the cities and townships than we anticipated when we budgeted.
Anything else?
Okay. Next one on your list is $22,000 for vehicle purchase. This $22,000 is intended to add an additional truck to their list of items that they're purchasing this year. It is intended to be used for environmental field service staff. This is a supplement to the current project 580204. That one has about 90,000 in it. They're going from one truck to two, or no, that one has 50-some thousand in it, 90,000 total. This will allow them to purchase that second vehicle. Any questions on that one? Okay. Next on the list is South Long Lake Gate for the South Long Lake Park. This is also coming from tax forfeited funds. It is to put a gate over the entrance to South Long Lake. It would also utilize solar panels so it can close for the nighttime hours to reduce some of the vandalism potential out there. This one is for $19,000. Any questions on that one?
No issues with that.
Mr. Say something on that.
Go ahead.
There is not potential. There
Paul?
actually was some.
Paul, before you continue, we can only see from your eyes to the top of your head. Can you adjust your
okay.
screen just a little bit? There you go.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Wrong with this thing. Just to let you know, I don't know if the rest of the board knows that there was some what the hell am I trying to say? There was some cookers down there. What am I trying to say?
Vandals?
Yeah, there was some people that threw some things in the river. Why can't I think of the name of it? Some grills. There were some grills there that people could cook, and they pulled those out and threw them in the river. So this is kind of the same thing that's happening up at Milford Mine Park. Is there's people that are there when it's dark out and they're doing damage, and so this gate will close at 10 o'clock. I think it's a good thing. It's just protecting our assets is really all it's doing. So anyway, sorry about that. I couldn't think of the name of grill.
And, Mr. Chairman, members, the budget amendment that you just previously approved for the picnic shelter park, for the picnic shelter at that park also included putting in some security cameras. So the security camera portion of dealing with these vandalism has already been covered. This is to just have the gate come down at night. I don't know if you have any report on how well that's worked at Milford, but we've had one there now for a while, knock on wood. Haven't had much for vandalism.
It's worked quite well, I believe, as long as we keep the mice out of the control box, but.
Any other concerns, questions on that one? Okay,
All right, next on the list is a structure demolition, $45,000 from tax forfeited fund to demo the Masonic Temple that is sitting on tax forfeited land. That's the extent of what I know about that one.
where is that building at?
It's, it's a block off of Main Street in Crosby.
In Crosby?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any concern about contamination and that this will not be enough money to cover?
And Ryan might speak, but there has been bids already led on that project, and this is ample money to cover the two bids that were sent out, so.
Okay.
All right.
Next one?
And then the final one on your list is to utilize tax forfeit, $336,850. This would be used to purchase our 5 patrol units and 1 boat and water patrol unit for the 2021 cycle for the sheriff's office. Our thought process on this one is with the sheriff's office frequently having to monitor parks throughout the system, that the tax forfeited funds would allow us to make purchases. As we've never done this before, we're proposing to take the entire CIP budget for 2021 vehicles and allocate that to tax forfeited and spend that this round. This is a one-time shot from our perspective at this point. There's potential maybe 5, 10, 15 years down the road, we could look at this as an option again. But because tax forfeited funds have to be used for environmental purposes and parks, we didn't think that we could go beyond this one cycle. So we're proposing to purchase the units plus all of the emergency equipment that goes with these units from this fund for 2021's CIP.
Concerns or questions? Okay,
All right,
so that's all of them then?
that is all of them.
And will they be on the consent agenda then, Tuesday?
Typically, we would put something on the consent calendar if you guys have already had an opportunity for the dialogue about it, but it is up to you. We would typically put this on the consent calendar because you've had the opportunity for the discussion and debate.
I'm comfortable with that, so we'll put it on the consent agenda.
Perfect. All right, next on our list is financial status update. We will start with budget performance. Organizationally, our revenues are up through the end of September. Primary driver behind this is CARES Act. We have $8 million sitting in our fund right now that was unanticipated. That puts us well above budget. We also collected higher tax amounts during the first half collection than we anticipated. We started out the whole COVID pandemic going, are we going to even collect all of our taxes? And we actually ended up collecting more than we anticipated based on budget. So that puts us a little bit higher, as well as our land sales performed better this year than anticipated. That was almost $500,000 of revenues there. On the expense side, we're on track with budget. There is some significant variances when we dig down deeper. Our public aid assistance is down substantially from what we budgeted, which is a positive for us. That means we're spending less money on foster home placement and other items. Highway construction costs are actually up. They offset each other. That's how we are staying flat. That is a number of projects that were unanticipated that we got federal funds for or local partners are participating in. So our expenses went up. Revenues will offset those. If we dig in deeper for the general fund, if you pull out the CARES Act dollars, our revenues are fairly flat with what we expect to be at this point. For expenditures, personnel and services and charges are all under budget at this point. Sheriff's is seeing personnel costs well below budget through September, as well as their jail expenses are down, which you would kind of expect with our population over in the jail being down. Our expenses should decrease too for food and other items that we're using over there. Those are the main drivers in Fund 1 and Highway. Right now, revenues are above budget. Local option sales tax, another item that we were concerned about early on in the pandemic, is actually trending right on with where we expect to be. I believe Mr. Bray actually told me it was 80 or 40 some thousand, 43,000 higher than what we have in the budget at this point. So we are doing very well on local option sales tax, which another item that kind of impressed that we got this far into the pandemic and it's trending with where we expect it to be. We also see increases in the muni construction revenue, bridge bonding, federal construction dollars, and local partners revenues. Those are directly related to the increased expenses that we see in highway for construction fees and local partner construction fees as well. So they offset each other. So their expenses are up and their revenues are up across the board. For Fund 12, Community Services, our revenues are up slightly. The revenues are up because of the first half tax collection being above what we expected. So that's the main driver in that area. Expenditures are well below budget at this point. That is a direct relation to our public aid assistance, particularly foster home and corrections placements being below expectations through this point of the year. That is a moving target that could change very quickly on us, but at this point it looks like we will be well below budget on both line items for out-of-home placement and corrections. For Fund 43, which is our capital projects fund, revenues are up slightly. Again, this is due to better than expected first half tax collections. Outside of that, our only other revenue source in here is, or two other revenue sources in here are the CPA funding from the state for county program aid, as well as the settlement from the tax forfeited fund. Those are both within the realm of where they should be based on budget. Expenses are down in our capital projects fund by $672,000 some change. This is a direct relation to the early action we took at the beginning of this year to freeze a number of projects to ensure that we had the proper cash flow to make it through the pandemic. So those are still sitting out there frozen. That is update on budget. For a cash flow side of the realm,
Chairman?
1 second.
Nick, do you have a projection for where you think we'll be at the end of the year?
at this point, a lot of it rides on what we are able to capture from the CARES Act dollars. I do anticipate that we will see fund balance build as a result of that. I think Fund 12 will see somewhere in the realm of $500,000 to $1.5 million in growth, depending on if there are any changes to foster home placement or corrections placement over the course of the next 3 months. We know that school's back in session and a lot of things occur when children are back in school and teachers can see them and pick up on things like that. So there's possibility that that could increase yet. But we do anticipate to see some fund balance growth there. CARES should also drive some fund balance growth within Fund 1 to get us on a path towards building those fund balances and being in a better position than we anticipated by the end of this year.
If we didn't have the CARES Act dollars, would the trend be miserable for us?
Without the CARES Act dollars, I still would anticipate that we'd see fund balance build based on how this year has played out. Again, sheriff's office expenses are down because we've seen less population in the jail. Expenses over in community services are down because of the corrections placement. So because of COVID, it helped drive some of those expenses down, and I think that's what's pushing us to see a better picture, even with CARES pulled out of the picture.
I would only add that if you had not decided to freeze capital projects early in the year, we would probably, well, there could very well be a different answer to that question. And so your anticipation of the problem and hoarding the resources from a different purpose, saying, no, we're not going to spend it on that purpose, we're going to hold it because we know stuff's coming. If you hadn't done that, then I don't think we would have produced fund balance growth.
Okay.
And so if we take COVID out, I think we would have had a good year. If we put just COVID in, I think we're still going to have a good year because you reacted early. Because we put CARES in, now I think we're going to have a better year than that. And so it's kind of three different answers to the questions based on CARES Act funds coming in, based on COVID and the expenses associated with it, or business as usual.
What's interesting is CARES Act is an infusion, to Commissioner Coring's point, of our tax dollars back to us so that we can actually operate our county with our dollars.
Yes.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, moving on to cash flows. Currently, we're trending in line with where we were last year. If we remove the dollars that we typically restrict for highway that we chose not to restrict this year, we are in line with where we were at this point last year. Putting those back in, because we did not restrict them, actually puts us about $3 million ahead in our cash flows at this point. So it was a good move on our part to not restrict those funds. We were restricting future funds for the next 5-year HIP against the highway fund balance and taking those out of play for cash flows right off the bat. This allows them to be open for cash flow purposes. Our cash on hand in the bank accounts is improved over 2019. A lot of that is a result of us not reinvesting our CDs as they matured this year. That was done specifically to help us with cash flows next year in April, when our low point is for physical cash in the bank. We will be in a position hopefully to navigate that without any problems because we did not reinvest those CDs. We do have a $4 million CD that we just recently reinvested. Last time we met, we talked about a 0.5% interest rate. We actually ended up getting a 0.48. It dropped by the time the CD matured. We did only put it in for a 6-month CD at this point. The variance from a 6-month to a 1-year was not very substantial, and this allows us more options that if we see CD rates improve, we can reinvest it at a higher rate, or it allows it to be utilized for cash flows if we need it at that point. That is our financial status update. Are there any questions on current financial status?
Any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Coring? Any questions?
No, Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
And that brings us to additional business. I don't have anything additional to add, so if there's anything that any of the commissioners would like to ask or discuss.
Any other additional information from commissioners for the staff? Seeing none, I think we can all go back to our business.